Rose McAllister's labored breathing echoed in the stillness of the vast Wyoming prairie as she stumbled forward, her once white blouse stained with dust and sweat, her skirts heavy with the morning dew. The merciless August sun of 1878 bore down upon her without remorse, scorching her fair skin and draining what little strength remained in her trembling limbs. The letter from her late father's solicitor had brought her west from Boston with promises of inheritance, a modest homestead that could be her salvation after the financial ruin that followed her father's death. But the stagecoach robbery 2 days prior had left her stranded miles from the nearest town, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the relentless determination that had always defined her character. She had walked for nearly 2 days, rationing the small flask of water a kind fellow passenger had pressed into her hands before they'd parted ways. Now, with the water gone and her lips cracked from dehydration, Rose could feel her resolve wavering. The horizon shimmered with heat, distorting her vision and making the distant mountains dance like specters mocking her futile journey. Just a little further, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible as she forced one foot in front of the other. The tall grass whispered against her skirts, seeming to urge her onward, but her body had other plans. Her knees buckled beneath her, and the world tilted on its axis. As her consciousness began to slip away, Rose caught a glimpse of something moving in the distance, a rider, perhaps, but it was too late. Darkness enveloped her as she collapsed into the swaying grass, the vast Wyoming sky her only witness. Samuel Reid pulled back on the reins of his chestnut quarter horse, squinting against the harsh sunlight. He'd been tracking a small herd of wild mustangs that had been grazing near his property, planning to try his hand at breaking the magnificent black stallion that led them. But something else had caught his eye, something out of place in the familiar landscape of waving prairie grass. "Whoa! Thunder!" he murmured to his horse, patting the animal's neck as he peered into the distance. A splash of color against the golden prairie, something that didn't belong. Samuel urged his horse forward, curiosity piqued. As he drew closer, his heart began to race. Not something, someone. A woman, by the looks of it, lying motionless in the tall grass. He dismounted before Thunder had fully stopped, boots hitting the ground with a thud as he rushed to the prone figure. Kneeling beside her, Samuel gently turned her over, revealing a face that, despite being smudged with dirt and reddened by the sun, struck him with its delicate beauty. "Miss? Can you hear me?" he called, noting with concern the heat radiating from her skin and the parched condition of her lips. No response came from the unconscious woman. Samuel glanced around the empty prairie. No sign of a horse, wagon, or traveling companions. What was a clearly well-bred lady doing alone in the middle of nowhere? Questions could wait, though. She needed help, and fast. With careful movements, he lifted her into his arms, surprised by how light she felt despite the layers of proper Eastern clothing she wore. He managed to mount Thunder while cradling her against his chest, her head lolling against his shoulder. "Hang on, miss," he murmured, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Samuel urged Thunder into a careful trot, mindful of his precious cargo as he headed back toward his cabin nestled in the foothills 5 miles away. The woman's breathing was shallow but steady against his chest, and he found himself oddly protective of this stranger who had literally fallen into his care. As they rode, Samuel studied her face. She was young, perhaps mid-20s, with auburn hair that had mostly escaped what must have once been an elegant coiffure. Her clothing, though travel-stained, was of fine quality, definitely not from around these parts. What had brought her here, and what misfortune had left her alone and unconscious in his field? The journey back to his cabin seemed longer than usual, each minute stretching as he worried about the woman's condition. Relief flooded through him when the familiar sight of his homestead came into view, a sturdy log cabin with smoke curling lazily from the stone chimney, a small barn, and corral beside it. It wasn't much compared to the grand homes back east, but it was his, built with his own hands after years of working cattle drives and saving every penny. Samuel's dog, a black and white border collie named Scout, came bounding out to greet them, barking excitedly until he sensed something was amiss and fell silent, watching curiously as Samuel dismounted carefully, still holding the unconscious woman. "Not now, Scout," Samuel said as he carried the woman toward the cabin. He managed to push the door open with his boot and stepped into the relative coolness of his home. The cabin was simple but neat, one large room with a stone fireplace, a sturdy table with 2 chairs, a small kitchen area, and a bed tucked into the corner. He laid the woman gently on his bed, then hurried to fetch a basin of water and a clean cloth. With gentle movements, he began to bathe her face, wiping away the dust and cooling her sun-heated skin. Her eyelids fluttered at the touch of the cool cloth, but she didn't wake. "That's it," he murmured encouragingly. "Come back now." Samuel continued his ministrations, carefully removing her boots and loosening the high collar of her blouse to help her breathe more easily. He noticed a delicate gold locket around her neck, but didn't touch it, respecting what privacy he could. After ensuring she was as comfortable as possible, he stoked the fire and put on a pot of coffee, knowing there was little more he could do until she regained consciousness. He pulled a chair beside the bed and settled in to wait, wondering about the mysterious woman fate had quite literally dropped in his path. The first thing Rose became aware of was the smell coffee brewing and the faint scent of pine. The second was that she was lying on something soft, not the hard ground where she'd fallen. Panic surged through her as her eyes flew open, only to be met with the unfamiliar sight of rough-hewn log walls and a strange man sitting nearby. She bolted upright with a gasp, then immediately regretted it as dizziness overwhelmed her. "Easy now," came a deep, gentle voice. Strong hands steadied her shoulders, easing her back against the pillows. "You're safe here." Rose blinked rapidly, trying to bring the man's face into focus. When her vision cleared, she found herself looking into the most striking pair of blue eyes she'd ever seen, set in a sun-weathered face beneath a shock of dark brown hair. Who are you?" she managed, her voice barely more than a rasp. "Where am I?" The man reached for a cup on the nearby table. "Name's Samuel Reid. You're at my cabin about 5 miles from where I found you collapsed in the field." He held the cup to her lips. "Here, drink this. Slowly now." The cool water was bliss against her parched throat. Rose had to resist the urge to gulp it down, knowing from experience that would only make her sick. After a few careful sips, she found her voice again. "Thank you, Mr. Reid. I'm Rose McAllister." She attempted to sit up again, more carefully this time. "I don't mean to impose on your hospitality." Samuel's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Don't reckon you planned to feign in my field, Miss McAllister." No imposition at all. His eyes, kind but assessing, studied her face. "If you don't mind my asking, what brings a lady like yourself out here alone?" "These parts can be dangerous for anyone traveling solo, let alone a woman." Rose hesitated, unsure how much to reveal to this stranger. But he had saved her life, and she owed him some explanation. "I was on the stagecoach to Willow Creek. We were robbed 2 days back, about 20 miles east of here." She gestured vaguely toward the door. "The bandits took the horses and left us stranded. The other passengers decided to wait for help, but she paused, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I thought I could make it on foot. I was expected in town, you see, and didn't want to miss my appointment." Samuel's eyebrows rose. "That was mighty brave and mighty foolish, Miss McAllister. 20 miles in this heat without proper provisions." He shook his head. "You're lucky to be alive." "I'm beginning to realize that," Rose admitted, humbled by her close call. "And please, call me Rose. I believe you've earned that right after saving my life." "Sam, then," he replied with a nod. "And while I admire your determination, Rose, I have to wonder what appointment could be so important you'd risk your life for it." Rose's fingers instinctively went to the locket around her neck, the last gift from her father, and the only valuable the bandits hadn't taken, hidden as it was beneath her high-necked blouse. "My father passed away 3 months ago," she explained, her voice softening with grief still fresh. "He left me a small property near Willow Creek. I'm to meet with his solicitor tomorrow." She broke off, suddenly alarmed. "What day is it?" "Tuesday," Sam supplied. "August 14th. Relief washed over her. "Then I haven't missed it. The appointment is for tomorrow afternoon." She attempted to swing her legs over the side of the bed. "If I could impose on your kindness just a bit further, perhaps you could direct me toward town? I should try to—" "Whoa there," Sam interrupted, gently but firmly pressing her back against the pillows. "You're in no condition to go anywhere today. You're suffering from heat exhaustion and probably haven't had a proper meal in days. His expression brooked no argument. You'll stay here tonight. Rest up, and I'll take you to town in the morning. Rose wanted to protest. She'd always prided herself on her independence, but the room was starting to spin again, and the thought of more walking made her muscles ache in anticipation. I suppose that would be the sensible course of action, she conceded reluctantly. But I've already taken your bed. Where will you sleep? Sam gestured toward a bedroll near the fireplace. I've slept in far worse places than my own floor, Rose. Don't you worry about me. He stood and moved to the small stove in the corner. Now, how about some food? Nothing fancy, but it'll put some strength back in you. As Sam busied himself preparing a simple meal, Rose took the opportunity to observe her rescuer more carefully. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to physical labor, his broad shoulders and strong hands speaking of years of hard work. Yet there was a gentleness to his movements, a carefulness that belied his rugged appearance. Have you lived here long? She asked, curious about this man who had saved her life. Sam glanced over his shoulder as he stirred something in a pot. 5 years on my own place. Before that, I worked cattle drives and saved every penny. Pride colored his voice. Built this cabin myself. It's not much, but it's mine, free and clear. It's lovely, Rose said sincerely, appreciating the simple but welcoming space. The cabin was tidy and well-maintained, with a few personal touches that hinted at the man behind them: a bookshelf with well-worn volumes, a handcrafted rocking chair near the fireplace, a guitar propped in the corner. Sam returned with a bowl of hearty stew, helping Rose sit up against the pillows before placing it in her hands. Venison stew. Should help get your strength back. The rich aroma made Rose's empty stomach rumble embarrassingly loud. She blushed but didn't hesitate to take a spoonful, sighing with pleasure at the savory taste. This is wonderful, she said after a few bites. You're quite the cook, Mr. Reid, Sam. He ducked his head slightly, seeming almost shy at the compliment. When you live alone, you either learn to cook or eat poorly. I chose the former. They ate in companionable silence, Rose surprised at how comfortable she felt in this stranger's home. Perhaps it was the near-death experience making her appreciate simple human kindness, or perhaps it was something about Sam himself, his quiet, capable presence providing a sense of safety she hadn't felt since her father died. As the evening wore on, Rose's eyelids grew heavy, the ordeal of the past days catching up with her. Sam noticed her struggling to stay awake and gently took the empty bowl from her hands. Rest now, he said softly. Tomorrow will be soon enough for traveling and appointments. Rose wanted to thank him again, to express the depth of her gratitude, but exhaustion claimed her before she could form the words. Her last conscious thought was of blue eyes that reminded her of the vast Wyoming sky. The morning dawned clear and cool, a brief respite before the August heat would reclaim the day. Rose woke feeling remarkably refreshed, her body still sore, but her mind clear. She opened her eyes to find the cabin empty, though the embers in the fireplace still glowed, suggesting Sam hadn't been gone long. She took the opportunity to assess her appearance and winced at what she found. Her once fine traveling dress was filthy and wrinkled beyond repair, her hair a tangled mess. What must Sam think of her? Rose pushed aside the blanket and carefully got to her feet, relieved when the room remained steady around her. She spotted a wash basin on a small table by the window, with fresh water and a clean cloth beside it. Sam had clearly anticipated her needs. She washed her face and hands, then did her best to smooth her hair and clothing, wishing fervently for her lost luggage. As she was attempting to tidy her appearance, the door opened, and Sam entered carrying a bucket of fresh milk. He stopped short at the sight of her standing. You're up. How are you feeling? Much improved. Thanks to your care, Rose replied with a genuine smile. Though I'm afraid I'm quite a sight. Sam's eyes traveled over her disheveled appearance, but there was no judgment in his gaze, only a warmth that made her cheeks flush. You look just fine to me, he said simply, setting down the bucket. Breakfast will be ready soon. The ride to town takes about 2 hours, so we've got time. True to his word, Sam soon had a hearty breakfast prepared: fluffy scrambled eggs, thick slices of bacon, and biscuits that melted in Rose's mouth. She ate with enthusiasm, her body craving nourishment after its ordeal. These biscuits are magnificent, she complimented between bites. Where did you learn to cook like this? A shadow crossed Sam's face briefly. My mother taught me the basics before she passed. Been improving on my own since then. I'm sorry about your mother, Rose said softly. My own passed when I was 12. Father never remarried. Sam nodded in understanding, a moment of shared grief passing between them. Your father, he was from around here originally? No, Rose explained, setting down her fork. He was a businessman from Boston. He invested in several ventures out west, including a small ranch near Willow Creek. I never knew much about it until after his death. She twisted the napkin in her lap. When his business failed and creditors took almost everything, the solicitor informed me that this property remained, having been purchased under a different arrangement. It's all I have left. Sam's expression grew thoughtful. Do you know which property? I'm familiar with most places around Willow Creek. The letter mentioned it was called Whispering Pines Ranch, Rose replied. Does that sound familiar? Sam's eyebrows rose in surprise. Old Jenkins' place? I know it well, borders my northern pasture. He studied her face. It's been abandoned for nearly 2 years since Jenkins passed. Your father bought it. Rose nodded. Apparently so, though I don't know the details. The solicitor, Mr. Hargrove, said he would explain everything when I arrived. She looked down at her hands. I'm hoping to make a fresh start there. Boston holds too many painful memories now. It's a good piece of land, Sam said, his voice encouraging. Needs work, but the house is solid, and there's a year-round creek running through it. Good grazing for cattle. Hope flickered in Rose's chest. Do you really think so? I know nothing about ranching, but I'm willing to learn. I've always been a quick study. Sam's lips quirked in that almost smile. Judging by your determination to walk 20 miles to keep an appointment, I believe you could accomplish just about anything once you set your mind to it. The compliment warmed Rose more than it should have. She reminded herself that tomorrow she would likely never see Samuel Reid again, once she reached town and began her new life. The thought brought an unexpected pang of sadness. After breakfast, Sam disappeared outside and returned with a bundle of cloth. Found these in my trunk, he explained, holding out what appeared to be a woman's shirt and skirt. They belonged to my sister when she visited last year. Might fit you better than what you've been traveling in. Rose accepted the clothes gratefully. Your sister won't mind? Clara's got more clothes than sense, Sam said with obvious brotherly affection. She'd be happy they're being put to use. He discreetly stepped outside to give Rose privacy to change. The clothing was simple but clean, a blue cotton skirt and white blouse that fit surprisingly well, if a bit loose in the waist. Rose used her own belt to cinch it, then did her best with her hair, plaiting it into a single braid that hung down her back. When Sam returned, something flickered in his eyes as he looked at her, something that made her heart beat a little faster. You look, he began, then cleared his throat. That fits you well. Thank you, Rose said softly. For everything, Sam. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness. No repayment necessary, he replied gruffly, suddenly busy gathering supplies for their journey. Just doing what anyone would do. But Rose knew that wasn't true. Not everyone would have taken in a stranger, cared for her, and offered to escort her to her destination without expectation of reward. Samuel Reid was a rare man indeed. Within the hour, they were ready to depart. Sam had saddled Thunder and a gentle mare he called Daisy for Rose to ride. He'd been patient in showing her how to mount and handle the reins, his hands strong and steady as he helped her into the saddle. Have you ridden before? He asked as they set out, the morning sun warming their backs. Rose adjusted her seat, grateful for the split skirt that made riding astride possible. A few times in the city parks, but nothing like this. She patted Daisy's neck. She seems very gentle, though. Daisy's got a good temperament, Sam assured her. Just follow my lead, and we'll take it nice and easy. As they rode, the vast Wyoming landscape stretched before them, rolling hills covered in prairie grass that rippled like a golden sea in the morning breeze, distant mountains standing sentinel against the impossibly blue sky. Despite her circumstances, Rose found herself captivated by the wild beauty surrounding them. It's breathtaking, she murmured, more to herself than to Sam. He glanced over at her, his expression softening. It gets in your blood, this country. Makes everything else seem small and unimportant. I can see why you chose to make your life here, Rose said, meeting his gaze. There's a freedom to it that's intoxicating. Freedom comes with responsibility out here, Sam replied. The land gives, but it also takes. Winters that freeze your bones, summers that parch your throat, storms that can destroy a year's work in an hour. His voice held no complaint, merely stating facts. But yes, I wouldn't trade it for all the comforts of the East. They rode in companionable silence for a time, Sam occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing bits of local knowledge. Rose found herself cataloging these details eagerly, wanting to understand this new world she was entering. Tell me about Willow Creek, she prompted as they crossed a shallow stream, the horses' hooves splashing pleasantly in the clear water. What sort of place is it? Small but growing, Sam answered, guiding Thunder up the opposite bank. Got about 500 souls now. Decent folks, mostly. There's a general store, hotel, church, schoolhouse. Even got a proper doctor last year, young fellow from Philadelphia who married the schoolteacher. And the people? Will they accept an Eastern woman trying to run a ranch on her own? Rose couldn't keep the worry from her voice. Sam considered this. Some will, some won't. Folk around here judge you more by what you do than where you come from, though. He gave her an appraising look. You planning to run it yourself? Most women in your position would sell and head back east. I have nothing to go back to, Rose said simply. And I've never been afraid of hard work. My father raised me to be self-sufficient, even if society didn't approve. It won't be easy, Sam warned. Ranching's hard enough with a full crew. Alone, it's near impossible. I'll hire help, Rose said with more confidence than she felt, and learn what I need to know. She straightened in the saddle. I refuse to be defeated before I've even begun, Mr. Reid. A genuine smile broke across Sam's face, transforming his features. I believe you won't, Miss McAllister. The rest of the journey passed swiftly, their conversation flowing easily between them. Rose found herself sharing stories of her life in Boston, her father's business, her education at a progressive ladies' academy, her love of literature. In turn, Sam spoke of his years on cattle drives, the challenges of establishing his own ranch, and his hopes for expanding his herd. They were drawing near to Willow Creek when Sam abruptly reined Thunder to a halt, his posture suddenly alert. Rose pulled Daisy to a stop beside him. What is it? She asked, noting the tension in his shoulders. Riders coming, Sam said quietly, his eyes fixed on the horizon where a cloud of dust indicated approaching horsemen. Stay close to me. Rose's heart quickened as she remembered the stagecoach robbery. Bandits? Can't tell yet, Sam replied, one hand moving to rest on the revolver at his hip. Could just be cowhands from one of the bigger spreads. As the riders drew closer, Sam's posture relaxed slightly. Barkley's men, he identified, recognizing the lead rider. They run cattle on the big ranch east of town. For riders approached, slowing their horses as they neared. The leader, a weathered man in his 40s with a gray-streaked beard, raised his hand in greeting. Reid, he acknowledged with a nod. Bit far from your place, ain't you? Morning, Simmons, Sam replied evenly. Just escorting Miss McAllister to town. She's taking over Jenkins' old place. Simmons' eyes shifted to Rose, narrowing slightly as he assessed her. That's so? Heard someone bought that property. Didn't expect a lady. His tone wasn't unfriendly, but there was skepticism there. Rose sat straighter in her saddle. My father purchased it before his passing, Mr. Simmons. I'm looking forward to becoming part of the community. Simmons exchanged glances with his companions, one of whom whispered something that made the others chuckle. Rose felt her cheeks warm, but maintained her composure. Well, good luck to you, madam, Simmons said, tipping his hat. You'll need it. He turned his attention back to Sam. Word of warning, Reid. There's been trouble. 3 head of our cattle rustled last night. Boys are tracking them now. Sam frowned. Anyone seen who's responsible? Not yet, but I'd keep your eyes open. They're getting bolder. Simmons gathered his reins. We'd best get on. Good day to you both. With that, the riders continued on their way, leaving a lingering cloud of dust in their wake. Pleasant fellow, Rose remarked dryly once they were out of earshot. Sam's mouth twitched. Simmons is all right. Just suspicious of newcomers. He urged Thunder forward. But he's right about one thing, cattle rustling's been increasing lately. You'll want to be careful when you get settled. The warning added to Rose's growing awareness of the challenges ahead, but she squared her shoulders, determined not to show doubt. I appreciate the advice. Perhaps I should look into purchasing a firearm. Sam glanced at her, surprise evident in his expression. You know how to shoot? My father taught me, Rose replied. He believed every woman should know how to defend herself. I'm quite proficient with a revolver, though it's been some time since I've practiced. Respect flickered in Sam's eyes. You continue to surprise me, Rose McAllister. They crested a gentle hill, and Willow Creek came into view in the valley below, a collection of wooden buildings lining a main street, with homes and smaller structures spreading outward. A church steeple rose above the other buildings, and the glint of a creek could be seen winding behind the town. There it is, Sam announced. Not Boston, but it has its charms. Rose took in the sight of what would be her new home with mixed emotions: excitement, apprehension, determination. It looks peaceful, she observed. A good place for new beginnings. As they rode into town, Rose was acutely aware of the curious glances directed their way. A woman in somewhat ill-fitting clothing, riding alongside one of the local ranchers, was clearly a subject of interest in a small community. Sam guided them to a two-story building with a sign proclaiming Hargrove and Sons, attorneys at law, hanging above the door. This is your solicitor's office, he said, dismounting and coming to help Rose down from Daisy. His hands at her waist were strong and sure as he lifted her easily to the ground. Rose found herself standing very close to him, looking up into those striking blue eyes. For a moment, neither moved away. Thank you, Sam, she said softly, for everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found me yesterday. Sam's hands lingered at her waist a heartbeat longer than necessary before he stepped back. Just glad I was riding that way. He cleared his throat. I should see about getting you settled at the hotel after your meeting. You'll need a place to stay until you can assess the condition of your property. Rose nodded, suddenly reluctant to part ways with this man who had become her unexpected champion. Will you wait? I shouldn't be long. I'll be here, Sam promised, taking the reins of both horses. Take your time. With a deep breath, Rose straightened her borrowed clothes, touched her locket for courage, and climbed the steps to the solicitor's office, ready to face whatever her new life might hold. The bell above the door jingled as Rose entered the law office. A young clerk looked up from his desk, surprise evident on his face at the sight of a woman in ranch clothes entering the establishment. May I help you, madam? He asked, rising to his feet. Yes, I have an appointment with Mr. Hargrove. I'm Rose McAllister, Henry McAllister's daughter. Recognition dawned in the young man's eyes. Miss McAllister, we weren't sure you'd make it. There was word of a stagecoach robbery east of here. Yes, I was on that coach, Rose confirmed. I had some difficulty in my journey, but I'm here now. Indeed you are. Please, come this way. Mr. Hargrove has been expecting you. The clerk led her to a door at the rear of the office, knocking briefly before opening it. Miss McAllister is here, sir. Albert Hargrove was a portly man in his 60s with spectacles perched on his nose and a kindly face that broke into a warm smile at the sight of her. Miss McAllister, what a relief to see you safe and sound. When we heard about the robbery, I feared the worst. He came around his desk to greet her, taking her hand in both of his. You look remarkably well for someone who's survived such an ordeal. I had assistance, Rose explained. A local rancher found me and brought me to town. Well, thank Providence for that. Hargrove gestured to a chair. Please sit. You must be eager to learn about your inheritance. For the next hour, Hargrove explained the details of her father's property holdings in Wyoming. Henry McAllister had purchased Whispering Pines Ranch 7 years earlier as an investment, leasing it to the previous occupant, Edward Jenkins, until his death 2 years ago. Since then, the property had stood vacant, maintained minimally by occasional visits from Hargrove's associates. The house is structurally sound, though it will need some cleaning and repair, Hargrove explained, spreading a map across his desk. The property encompasses 600 acres, including good grazing land, timber, and water rights to Pine Creek. He pointed to various locations on the map. There's a small barn, corral, and bunkhouse for hands, should you decide to hire some. And the financial situation? Rose asked, the practical side of her mind already calculating. Hargrove nodded approvingly at her business-like approach. Your father was wise in his arrangements here. The property is fully paid for, with taxes current through the end of the year. Additionally, there is a sum of $2,000 in the Willow Creek Bank, established in your name. He peered at her over his spectacles. Not a fortune by Eastern standards, but a significant amount in these parts. Enough to purchase livestock and hire help to get started if managed carefully. Relief washed over Rose. The situation was better than she'd dared hope. When can I see the property? I can have my clerk drive you out there tomorrow, if you wish, Hargrove offered. It's about 5 miles northwest of town. That won't be necessary, Rose replied. Mr. Reid has offered to accompany me. He says his property borders mine to the south. Samuel Reid? Hargrove's eyebrows rose. A good man. One of the most respected ranchers in the area, despite his relatively short time here. He gathered some papers. In that case, I'll have these deeds and accounts transferred to your name immediately. You can take possession as soon as you're ready. By the time Rose emerged from the law office, the afternoon sun was high overhead, casting short shadows on the dusty main street. She found Sam waiting patiently, having secured the horses to a hitching post and taken a seat on a bench outside the general store. He stood as she approached, his eyes searching her face. Good news, I hope? Rose couldn't contain her smile. Better than I expected. The property is in good condition, and there are funds to help me get established. She clutched the envelope of documents Hargrove had given her. I can take possession immediately. That's good to hear, Sam said, genuine pleasure in his voice. You'll want to see it, I expect? Yes, but perhaps tomorrow? Rose suddenly felt the weight of the past few days catching up with her. I should arrange lodging for tonight and purchase some necessities. Sam nodded understanding. The Willow Creek Hotel is just down the street. Simple but clean. And Miller's General Store can provide whatever you need until you can send for proper trunks from back east. They walked together down the boardwalk, leading the horses, as Sam pointed out various establishments: the bank, the doctor's office, the small restaurant that served decent food if you're not too particular. At the hotel, a matronly woman named Mrs. Putnam greeted them warmly, though her curious gaze lingered on Rose's borrowed clothes and her obvious acquaintance with Sam. A room for the lady, Sam explained. She's just arrived to take over the old Jenkins place. Whispering Pines? Mrs. Putnam's eyes widened. All by yourself, dear? For now, Rose replied with a polite smile, growing accustomed to this reaction. I plan to hire help once I've assessed the property's needs. Well, you're welcome here as long as needed. Mrs. Putnam handed her a key. Room 3, top of the stairs. Baths at the end of the hall. I'll have hot water sent up if you'd like to freshen up. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Rose said gratefully. After arranging for her bath, Rose turned to Sam, suddenly awkward. Their time together was coming to an end, and she was surprised by how much that thought affected her. Will you join me for dinner this evening? She asked impulsively. It's the least I can do to thank you properly. Sam hesitated, and for a moment Rose feared he would decline. I'd be honored, he finally said. I need to see to a few things in town, but I can return at 6, if that suits you. Perfectly, Rose agreed, warmth spreading through her chest. I'll see you then. After Sam departed, Rose indulged in the luxury of a hot bath, washing away the dust and worry of the past days. Mrs. Putnam had provided soap and towels, and even offered to have Rose's borrowed clothes laundered while she bathed. I have a spare dress you can wear meanwhile, the kind woman offered. My niece left it last time she visited, and she's about your size. Thus, when Sam called for her that evening, Rose greeted him wearing a simple but pretty blue calico dress, her hair freshly washed and arranged in a neat chignon. She'd purchased a few essentials from the general store: a hairbrush, pins, and a modest shawl among them. Sam stopped short when she opened the door, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her transformed appearance. He himself had cleaned up, wearing a fresh shirt under his vest, and having tamed his dark hair. You look, he began, then seemed to lose his words. Presentable, I hope, Rose supplied with a small smile. Mrs. Putnam was kind enough to loan me a dress. More than presentable, Sam said quietly. You look beautiful, Rose. The simple compliment, delivered without artifice, meant more to Rose than the most flowery praise from Boston suitors. Her cheeks warmed as she accepted his offered arm. The restaurant's just across the street, Sam explained as they descended the hotel stairs. Nothing fancy, but Martha Simmons, no relation to the cowhand we met, makes the best fried chicken this side of the Mississippi. The restaurant was indeed simple: a dozen tables covered with checkered cloths, kerosene lamps providing warm light as evening descended. Several diners looked up as they entered, and Rose was conscious of being the object of curious stares. Sam guided her to a table near the window, pulling out her chair with unexpected gallantry. A plump, cheerful woman who introduced herself as Martha took their order, beaming at Rose when she learned who she was. Jenkins' place, eh? About time someone brought that property back to life. Too good to sit empty. She winked at Sam. And you're showing the lady around, are you? How neighborly of you, Reid. Sam's ears reddened slightly at the woman's teasing tone. Just being helpful, Martha. Martha hummed, not bothering to hide her amusement as she went to fetch their meals. I'm afraid I've made you the subject of town gossip, Rose said softly after the woman left. People seem very interested in your involvement with the new arrival. Sam shrugged, though his expression remained somewhat flustered. Small towns. Everyone knows everyone's business. They'll find something new to talk about soon enough. The food, when it arrived, was indeed excellent golden fried chicken, fluffy mashed potatoes with gravy, fresh green beans, and cornbread still warm from the oven. Rose hadn't realized how hungry she was until the aroma reached her nostrils. They ate with good appetite, their conversation flowing easily as it had during their journey. Rose found herself laughing at Sam's dry observations about local characters, while he listened with genuine interest to her stories of life in Boston. Have you ever been east? She asked, curious about this man who was becoming increasingly important to her. Sam shook his head. Farthest east I've been is St. Louis, when I was driving cattle to the railhead. Never had much desire to go further. He hesitated, then added, though I admit, you make Boston sound more appealing than I'd imagined. It has its charms, Rose acknowledged. The libraries, the theaters, the museums. A wistful note entered her voice. But there's a constraint to life there. So many rules about who you can be, how you must behave, especially for women. And you found that difficult? Sam asked perceptively. Rose nodded, surprised by his understanding. My father encouraged my independence, my education. But society. She sighed. Let's just say a woman with opinions and ambitions isn't viewed favorably in Boston drawing rooms. Their loss, Sam said simply. Out here, those qualities might just keep you alive. As they finished their meal, the restaurant had gradually filled with other diners. Rose noticed a table of well-dressed men watching them with interest, one leaning to whisper to his companions. Sam followed her gaze, his expression tightening. Barrett and his crowd, he said quietly, owns the largest spread in the county. Thinks that entitles him to run everything and everyone around here. As if hearing his name, one of the men distinguished-looking with silver hair and an expensive suit rose from his table and approached them. Reid, he acknowledged with a nod. Unusual to see you in town for dinner. His gaze shifted to Rose, assessing. And who might this lovely lady be? Sam stood, his posture stiff. James Barrett, may I present Miss Rose McAllister. She's taking over Whispering Pines Ranch. Barrett's eyebrows rose. Is that so? Interesting. He turned his full attention to Rose, taking her hand without being offered it. A pleasure, Miss McAllister. I'm always delighted to welcome new neighbors, especially such charming ones. There was something in his manner that raised Rose's hackles of presumption and ownership in the way he looked at her. She withdrew her hand as quickly as politeness allowed. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. I look forward to establishing my ranch. Your ranch? Barrett repeated, amusement evident in his tone. That's ambitious. Ranching is difficult work, Miss McAllister. Not really suited to a lady's capabilities. Rose felt Sam tense beside her, but she spoke before he could. I'm aware of the challenges, Mr. Barrett. Fortunately, determination often compensates for what one might lack in experience. Barrett's smile didn't reach his eyes. Indeed. Well, should you find the task overwhelming, I'd be happy to discuss purchasing the property from you. Whispering Pines would make an excellent addition to my holdings. That's very kind, Rose replied coolly. But I have no intention of selling. Of course. Barrett's tone suggested he expected her to change her mind. The offer stands, should you reconsider. He glanced at Sam. Reid here knows how challenging it can be to run a small operation. Don't you, Reid? Rose isn't looking for business advice tonight. Barrett, Sam said, his voice level but firm. If you'll excuse us, we were just finishing our meal. Barrett's face hardened momentarily before he recovered his smooth demeanor. Certainly. Enjoy your evening. He looked at Rose once more. A pleasure, Miss McAllister. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other. As Barrett returned to his table, Rose released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I take it he's not one of your favorite people. Sam's jaw was tight. Barrett's been buying up small ranches for years, sometimes using methods that aren't entirely above board. He wants to control all the water rights in the county. He looked at her seriously. Be careful around him, Rose. He doesn't take rejection well. The warning cast a momentary shadow over their evening, but it lifted as they walked back to the hotel in the soft twilight. The streets of Willow Creek were quiet now, most businesses closed for the night. Only the saloon showing signs of activity with piano music drifting through its swinging doors. At the hotel entrance, they paused, neither quite ready to say goodnight. What time would you like to ride out to Whispering Pines tomorrow? Sam asked, his hat in his hands. Early, if that's convenient for you, Rose replied. I'm eager to see my new home. I'll be here at 8, Sam promised. He hesitated, then added, Rose, about Barrett, I can handle men like James Barrett, she assured him. I've dealt with his type in Boston. Men who believe a woman alone is either helpless or available. Sam nodded, though concern still lingered in his eyes. Just know that he has influence here, and not everyone stands up to him. Do you? Rose asked softly. A ghost of a smile touched Sam's lips. We've had our disagreements. One reason I'm not on his list of favorite people. Then I'm in good company, Rose said with a smile of her own. Their eyes held for a long moment, and Rose felt something shift between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits finding each other in an unexpected place. Good night, Sam, she finally said, her voice softer than she'd intended. Good night, Rose. He placed his hat back on his head. Sleep well. She watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the darkening sky, before turning to enter the hotel. Whatever tomorrow might bring, Rose knew one thing with certainty: Samuel Reid had become important to her in ways she hadn't anticipated when she collapsed in that field just one day ago. Rose was ready and waiting when Sam arrived promptly at 8 the next morning. She had purchased a few more practical items from the general store, including a sturdy pair of boots and a wide-brimmed hat to protect against the sun. The proprietor had promised to order additional necessities from Cheyenne, including proper riding clothes. Good morning, Sam greeted her, his eyes warming at the sight of her. You look ready for ranch life already. Rose laughed, adjusting her new hat. Hardly, but I'm trying to be practical. These skirts aren't ideal for riding, but they'll have to do until my order arrives from Cheyenne. You'll do fine, Sam assured her, helping her mount Daisy, whom he'd brought along again for her use. It's about an hour's ride to Whispering Pines. The road's good most of the way. They rode out of town under the curious gazes of early rising shopkeepers and townsfolk. Rose held her head high, already feeling a strange sense of belonging in this place so different from her Boston home. The morning was glorious, the air still cool and sweet with the scent of sage and prairie grass. As they left the town behind, the landscape opened up before them: rolling hills, stands of pine and aspen, and in the distance, the majestic mountains that gave Wyoming its wild character. It's so vast, Rose marveled, taking in the panorama. In Boston, you're always hemmed in by buildings, by people. Here, you can breathe. Sam nodded, understanding. That's what drew me west. The space to be your own man, to build something that's truly yours. He glanced at her, though it can get lonely sometimes. There was something in his voice that made Rose look at him more closely. You never married? She asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. Forgive me, that's none of my business. No, it's all right, Sam assured her. No, I never married. Came close once, about 3 years ago. Sarah was a schoolteacher here in Willow Creek. A shadow crossed his face. She decided ranch life was too isolated, too hard. Went back east to teach in Chicago. I'm sorry, Rose said softly, recognizing the lingering hurt in his voice. Sam shrugged, though his casual gesture didn't quite mask his feelings. It was for the best. She wouldn't have been happy out here, and I couldn't be happy anywhere else. He cleared his throat. What about you? No husband waiting back in Boston? Rose shook her head. No, there were suitors, but... She hesitated, then decided on honesty. Most men in Boston society want a certain kind of wife, decorative, agreeable, focused on social standing. That's not me. Their loss, Sam said, echoing his words from the night before, and Rose felt a rush of warmth at his simple acceptance of her nature. They rode in companionable silence for a time, until Sam pointed to a line of trees in the distance. That's Pine Creek. Your property starts just beyond it. As they drew closer, Rose's anticipation grew. This was her land, her new beginning. What would she find? Would she be equal to the challenge of making this remote place her home? They forded the shallow creek, crystal clear water gurgling over smooth stones, and followed a well-worn track through a stand of tall pines that gave the property its name. As they emerged from the trees, Rose caught her first glimpse of Whispering Pines Ranch. A two-story house of weathered wood stood in a natural clearing, its wide front porch facing the mountains. A barn and corral stood to one side, along with what must be the bunkhouse Sam had mentioned. The buildings showed signs of neglect: peeling paint, a sagging fence rail, tall grass growing unchecked, but Rose could see the bones of a lovely home beneath. "It's beautiful," she breathed, reining Daisy to a stop to take in the view. Sam studied her face. "You really think so? It needs work." "Yes, but I can see what it could be." Rose's mind was already racing with possibilities. "The house is larger than I expected, and that view of the mountains." They dismounted, tethering the horses to a hitching post that had somehow remained sturdy. Sam tested the steps to the porch cautiously before helping Rose up. The front door was locked, but Hargrove had provided a key, which Rose used with hands that trembled slightly with excitement. The door creaked open to reveal a spacious main room, dusty and musty from disuse, but structurally sound. Furniture draped with sheets created ghostly silhouettes in the dim light until Sam moved to open the shutters, allowing sunshine to stream in. "Previous owner left the furnishings," he explained, pulling a sheet off a sturdy oak table. "Jenkins was a bachelor, so it's simple stuff, but solid." Rose moved through the house with growing delight. The main floor contained a large living area, a kitchen with a good iron stove, a small study, and a dining room. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms and, to her surprise, a proper bathroom with a copper tub. "Indoor plumbing," she marveled. "I didn't expect that." "Jenkins was ahead of his time," Sam said, checking that the pump mechanism still worked. "Had this put in about 5 years ago. Water's pumped up from a cistern that collects rainwater and runoff from the creek." They continued their exploration, with Sam pointing out areas that needed repair and Rose making mental notes. The kitchen pantry was bare, of course, but the root cellar beneath the house still contained some preserved goods that had weathered the abandonment. Outside, they inspected the barn large enough for 6 horses and storage and the small bunkhouse that could accommodate 4 ranch hands. Behind the house was what had once been a vegetable garden, now overgrown but still defined by its rock border. "What do you think?" Sam asked as they completed their tour. "Still want to take it on?" Rose stood in the yard, turning slowly to take in the entirety of what was now her property. Despite the work needed, despite the challenges ahead, she felt something she hadn't experienced since before her father's death: hope. "Yes," she said with certainty. "This is where I belong, Sam. I can feel it." The look he gave her was complicated admiration mixed with concern, and something deeper that made her heart beat faster. "Then let's talk about what you'll need," he said, all practicality now. "First priority is getting the house habitable. Needs a good cleaning, some minor repairs. Roof looks solid, thankfully." They sat on the porch steps, Sam outlining what would be required to get the ranch operational while Rose listened intently, asking questions and taking mental notes. "You'll need help," Sam concluded. "At minimum, a ranch hand who knows cattle, and someone to help with the house until you're settled." "Can you recommend anyone?" Rose asked. Sam considered. "The Wilsons have a daughter, Mary, who might be willing to help with the house. Good family, trustworthy. For ranch work." He hesitated. "I know a fellow, Hank Turner. Experienced, honest. Works seasonal jobs mostly. Last I heard, he was looking for steady employment. Would you speak to them for me?" Rose asked. "They might be more receptive coming from you rather than a strange woman from the East." "Of course," Sam agreed. "In the meantime, you should stay in town until the house is ready. A week of solid work should make it livable, if not pretty." Rose nodded. though part of her wanted to move in immediately, dust and all. I'll need supplies from town. And to arrange for delivery of my trunks from the stage office in Cheyenne, once they're recovered. We can make a list, head back to town today to get started, Sam suggested. I have some tools you can borrow until you can purchase your own. As they prepared to leave, Rose took one last look at the house that would be her home. Despite its current state, she could envision it cleaned and polished, smoke curling from the chimney, perhaps flowers growing alongside the porch. Thank you, Sam, she said suddenly, turning to face him. For all of this. For finding me in that field, for bringing me here. She gestured to the ranch. For believing I can do this when most would think me foolish. Sam's expression softened. You're not foolish, Rose. Brave, yes. Determined, certainly. He hesitated, then added quietly. And I'm glad I found you, too. The simple words carried a weight that settled in Rose's heart, warm and promising. Whatever lay ahead, she knew she had found not only a new home, but a true friend in Samuel Reid. The ride back to town was filled with practical discussions what supplies she would need immediately, how best to approach potential employees, when Sam could spare time from his own ranch to help with repairs. Rose was grateful for his advice, recognizing how fortunate she was to have found someone so knowledgeable and willing to assist. In town, they went directly to Miller's General Store, where Rose purchased cleaning supplies, lamp oil, basic foodstuffs, and tools under Sam's guidance. Mr. Miller, a balding man with spectacles and a friendly manner, promised to deliver everything to Whispering Pines the following day. And I'll send word to Mary Wilson about helping with the cleaning, he offered. Her family farms just outside town. Good people. Thank you, Mr. Miller, Rose said gratefully. I'd like to make the house habitable as quickly as possible. Their next stop was the telegraph office, where Rose sent messages to her father's solicitor in Boston regarding the shipping of her personal belongings and to the stage office in Cheyenne about her lost luggage. As they emerged from the telegraph office, Sam spotted a man across the street. That's Hank Turner, he said, nodding toward a lean, weathered individual leaving the feed store. Let me speak with him about work. Rose waited outside the bank while Sam crossed to talk with Turner. Through the window, she could see them in conversation, Turner nodding occasionally as Sam spoke. Eventually, they shook hands, and Sam returned to her side. He's interested, Sam reported. Said he can start tomorrow, help get the place in order. Knows cattle and horses, good with repairs too. He hesitated. I told him you'd pay fair wages, but would need time to build up the operation. He seemed agreeable to the terms. Thank you, Rose said, relief evident in her voice. Having experienced help will make all the difference. They finished their errands by early afternoon, arranging for everything Rose would need to begin work on the ranch the following day. Sam insisted on purchasing lunch at the small cafe before they parted ways. I need to head back to my place, he explained as they finished their meal. Got my own chores waiting. But I'll ride over tomorrow afternoon to see how you're getting on. Rose felt a pang of disappointment at his departure, but nodded understanding. Of course. You've already done more than I could have asked. Neighbors help neighbors out here, Sam said simply, though his eyes held something more personal than mere neighborly duty. It's how we survive. He walked her back to the hotel, where they stood somewhat awkwardly, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Tomorrow, then, Rose finally said. Sam nodded, settling his hat on his head. Tomorrow. She watched him mount Thunder and ride out of town, his straight back and confident seat in the saddle a reassuring sight. Only when he disappeared from view did Rose realize how much she had come to depend on his presence in the short time they'd known each other. The next week passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Hank Turner arrived at Whispering Pines early the following morning, bringing with him a wagon of supplies from town and Mary Wilson, a cheerful young woman of 19 who attacked the dust and cobwebs of the abandoned house with remarkable vigor. Rose worked alongside them both, scrubbing floors, washing windows, and helping Hank repair broken fence rails and a leaky roof. By the end of each day, she was exhausted but exhilarated by the visible progress. Sam rode over each afternoon, often bringing additional tools or supplies he thought might be useful. He worked alongside them for a few hours before returning to his own ranch, his help invaluable as they tackled the more difficult repairs. On the fourth day, Rose's trunks arrived from Cheyenne, recovered from the bandits' hideout during an arrest. Having her own clothing and personal belongings restored some sense of normalcy, though she found herself increasingly comfortable in the simpler, more practical attire suited to ranch life. By the end of the week, the house was clean and habitable, basic repairs completed, and the barn made ready for livestock. Rose moved in on Sunday afternoon, her heart full as she stood on the porch of her very own home. "Not bad for a week's work," Sam observed, joining her as the sunset painted the mountains in shades of pink and gold. He had helped transport her belongings from town and stayed to ensure everything was in order. "It's more than I dared hope," Rose admitted, gazing at the transformed property. The house gleamed with fresh polish, curtains hung at the windows, and the yard had been cleared of weeds and debris. "I can hardly believe it's mine." "You've worked hard," Sam said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Most women from your background would have given up after the first day of scrubbing floors." Rose laughed. "Perhaps, but I've never shied away from hard work." She turned to face him. "And I had excellent help. I couldn't have done this without you, Sam." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them, a recognition of growing feelings neither had yet acknowledged aloud. The moment was interrupted by Hank, calling from the barn about preparations for the livestock delivery scheduled for the following day. Sam cleared his throat and stepped back, the spell broken. "I should head back," he said, regret evident in his voice. "Got an early start tomorrow myself." "Of course," Rose replied, hiding her disappointment. "Will I see you tomorrow for the cattle delivery?" "Wouldn't miss it," Sam promised with a smile that warmed her more than the evening sun. "Your first herd deserves a proper welcome." As Sam rode away, Rose stood watching until he disappeared beyond the line of pines. In just over a week, he had become essential to her life in ways she hadn't anticipated. His steady presence, his unwavering support, his quiet strength all had worked their way into her heart. That night, in her bedroom overlooking the mountains, Rose wrote in her journal by lamplight, recording the events since her arrival in Wyoming. When she came to write of Sam, her pen hesitated. How to describe this man who had rescued her from certain death, who had believed in her when others doubted, who made her feel both strong and cherished? In the end, she wrote simply, "I believe I may be falling in love with Samuel Reid. Heaven help me if he doesn't feel the same." The following weeks saw Rose settling into ranch life with a determination that impressed even the skeptical townsfolk of Willow Creek. The delivery of 20 head of cattle and 4 horses purchased with the funds her father had left marked the official beginning of her operation. Sam had indeed been present for the delivery, riding alongside the drovers to ensure the animals arrived safely. The pride in his eyes as Rose confidently directed where the cattle should be pastured had filled her with a warm glow that had nothing to do with the summer sun. Hank proved to be an invaluable employee, his knowledge of cattle and the local terrain helping Rose avoid the mistakes of an inexperienced rancher. Mary continued to help at the house 3 days a week, becoming a friend as well as an employee. Sam visited regularly, sometimes bringing supplies from town, other times simply riding over to check on her progress. Each visit deepened the connection between them, their conversations ranging from practical ranching advice to personal histories and hopes for the future. Rose learned that Sam had come west at 18, working cattle drives to earn money for his own land. He spoke of his family back in Missouri, parents now passed, a married sister in St. Louis, a brother who had gone to California during the gold rush and never returned. In turn, she shared stories of her childhood in Boston, her education, and her complex relationship with her father, a man who had encouraged her independence while still hoping she would make a conventional marriage. "He would have liked you," Rose told Sam one evening as they sat on her porch, watching the sunset. "He valued honesty and hard work above social standing." "I hope so," Sam replied quietly, his eyes on her face rather than the spectacular view. "I would have liked to meet the man who raised such a remarkable daughter." The compliment brought a flush to Rose's cheeks and a flutter to her heart. These moments between them were happening more frequently, meaningful glances, hands touching longer than necessary, conversations that seemed to carry deeper currents beneath the surface. Yet neither had taken the step to declare their feelings openly. Rose sensed Sam's hesitation and understood it. He had been hurt before by a woman who couldn't accept ranch life. And perhaps he questioned whether she, too, might eventually long for the comforts and culture of the East. For her part, Rose was certain of her own heart, but unsure of the propriety of revealing her feelings first. Despite the greater freedoms of the West, some social conventions remained, and a lady was expected to wait for a gentleman's declaration. The situation might have continued in this holding pattern indefinitely had fate not intervened in a most unexpected way. It was late September, nearly 2 months after Rose's arrival in Wyoming. The days were growing shorter, the nights cooler, and the mountains had begun to show the first hints of autumn gold among the evergreens. Rose had ridden out alone to check on a section of fence Hank had reported damaged, possibly by deer or elk. The area was on the northern boundary of her property, not far from the main road to town, but seldom traveled since a better route had been established years earlier. She had become a confident rider in the weeks since her arrival, and Daisy, purchased from Sam after Rose grew attached to the gentle mare, responded well to her commands. The day was pleasantly cool, the sky a brilliant blue unmarred by clouds. As Rose approached the damaged fence, she noticed hoofprints in the soft earth too many for a wild animal, suggesting riders had passed through recently. She frowned, dismounting to examine the tracks more closely. At least 3 horses, by her estimation, and recent. The sound of approaching riders made her straighten, her hand instinctively going to the small revolver she now carried in her saddlebag, a gift from Sam, who had helped her practice until her aim was true. 3 men appeared around the bend in the old road, riding at an unhurried pace. They pulled up short at the sight of her, exchanging glances that immediately put Rose on alert. Well, the leader said, a thin man with a scar running down one cheek. What have we here? A lady all alone. Rose stood her ground, though her heart hammered in her chest. You're trespassing on private property, gentlemen. Whispering Pines Ranch. She kept her voice steady. Can I help you with something? The men exchanged amused glances. Hear that, boys? The lady wants to help us. The leader leaned forward in his saddle. As a matter of fact, madam, you might be able to do just that. We're looking for a place to rest our horses. Been riding hard. The town of Willow Creek is just 5 miles south, Rose replied coolly. You'll find accommodations there. The second man, heavy-set with a bushy beard, spat tobacco juice onto the ground. Town ain't exactly welcoming to our type, is it, Jed? Not since that misunderstanding at the bank. The leader, Jed, agreed with a smile that raised the hairs on Rose's neck. No, I think we'll accept your hospitality instead, madam. With dawning horror, Rose realized who these men must be: the gang responsible for the stagecoach robbery she had survived, perhaps even the cattle rustlers that had been plaguing local ranchers. Her mind raced, calculating options. She was too far from the house for anyone to hear a call for help, and 3 against 1 were poor odds, even with her revolver. My ranch hand will be looking for me if I don't return soon, she said, hoping to deter them. And the sheriff in town keeps a close watch on strangers. Then we'd best not linger, Jed replied, his pretense of politeness dropping away. Mount up, lady. You're going to show us to your house and provide us with food and whatever valuables you've got stashed away. Rose's hand inched toward her saddlebag, but the third man, silent until now, noticed the movement and drew his pistol with alarming speed. I wouldn't, he warned, his voice soft but menacing. Not unless you want to die right here. Seeing no immediate alternative, Rose reluctantly mounted Daisy, her mind working furiously for a plan. The men positioned themselves around her, 1 in front, 2 behind, and urged their horses forward toward the ranch house. As they rode, Rose tried to think of some way to alert Hank or Mary, who might be at the house. If she could somehow create a distraction, get away long enough to reach her revolver. They had just entered the stand of pines that marked the approach to the house when hoofbeats sounded on the path ahead. Rose's heart leapt as a familiar figure rounded the bend. Sam, astride Thunder. He pulled up short at the sight of the group, his eyes quickly assessing the situation. Rose saw recognition flash across his face, followed by a cold anger she had never witnessed in him before. Gentlemen, Sam said evenly, though his hand rested near his holstered revolver. Seems you're escorting Miss McAllister home. How neighborly. Just passing through, Jed replied, tension evident in his posture. The lady was kind enough to offer hospitality. Sam's gaze met Rose's, and she gave a slight shake of her head, silently communicating the truth. His expression hardened. That's so. His eyes never left the leader's face. Strange, since Miss McAllister mentioned to me just yesterday that she wasn't expecting visitors. The atmosphere thickened with danger. Rose could see the men calculating their odds 3-1 should have been in their favor, but something in Sam's demeanor gave them pause. Now, mister, Jed began, his hand drifting toward his gun. This ain't your concern. The words were barely out of his mouth when Sam drew and fired in one fluid motion. The shot struck Jed's shoulder, causing him to cry out and drop his own weapon. Before the other men could react, Sam had his gun trained on the bearded man. Next one won't be so merciful, he warned, voice deadly calm. Drop your weapons. Now. Stunned by the speed and precision of Sam's action, the men complied, the bearded one cursing under his breath while the third looked ready to bolt. Rose, Sam said without taking his eyes off the men. Ride to town. Get the sheriff. I'm not leaving you alone with them, she protested. I'll be fine, Sam assured her, a hint of a smile touching his lips despite the tension. These boys and I are going to wait right here. Aren't we, boys? The wounded leader glared but made no move, blood seeping through the fingers he pressed to his shoulder. Rose hesitated only a moment longer before turning Daisy and galloping toward town, her heart pounding with fear for Sam, but also with a fierce pride in his courage. Sheriff Morgan and 2 deputies returned with her within the hour. They found Sam exactly where she'd left him, the 3 would-be thieves sitting on the ground under his unwavering aim, the leader's shoulder roughly bandaged with Sam's own bandana. Reid, the sheriff acknowledged with a nod as they approached. I see you found our bank robbers. Been looking for this lot for weeks. Just happened upon them escorting Miss McAllister home against her will, Sam replied, finally lowering his weapon as the deputies took charge of the prisoners. Figured they might be the same gang that robbed her stagecoach back in August. Same ones. All right, Sheriff Morgan confirmed. And likely responsible for the cattle rustling too. He turned to Rose. You all right, Miss McAllister? They didn't harm you. No, thanks to Mr. Reid, Rose answered, unable to keep the emotion from her voice. He arrived just in time. The sheriff supervised as his deputies secured the prisoners on their horses for the ride to town. The leader, Jed, glared venomously at Sam as they prepared to depart. This ain't over, Reid, he spat. A man like me has friends. They'll hear about this. Looking forward to meeting them too, Sam replied evenly, unimpressed by the threat. Once the sheriff and his prisoners had departed, Rose found herself alone with Sam on the pine-shadowed path. The adrenaline that had sustained her began to ebb, leaving her trembling with delayed reaction. Sam noticed immediately, dismounting and coming to her side. Rose, are you sure you're not hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Without warning, tears sprang to her eyes, tears of relief, of fear finally acknowledged, of overwhelming emotion. Hey now, Sam murmured, gently helping her down from the saddle. It's all right. You're safe. The moment her feet touched the ground, Rose did something she had never done before. She threw herself into his arms, pressing her face against his chest as the tears flowed freely. Sam's arms closed around her without hesitation, strong and secure, one hand coming up to stroke her hair soothingly. I've got you, he whispered against the top of her head. I've got you, Rose. They stood that way for long moments, Rose drawing comfort from his steady heartbeat beneath her ear, his solid presence anchoring her as the fear gradually subsided. When she finally pulled back slightly to look up at him, Sam's expression was tender, his blue eyes dark with an emotion that made her breath catch. I could have lost you today, he said, his voice rough with feeling. When I saw you with those men and realized what was happening. He trailed off, his hand coming up to gently cup her cheek. Rose, she never found out what he was about to say, because at that moment, hoofbeats sounded on the path again. Hank, returning from town with supplies. Sam stepped back reluctantly as the ranch hand rounded the bend, though his eyes held a promise that their conversation wasn't over. That evening, after the excitement had died down and Hank had retired to the bunkhouse, Rose sat on her porch in the gathering dusk. The events of the day had left her drained, but also strangely energized, as if a veil had been lifted from her eyes. Life was precious and unpredictable. Why waste time hiding feelings that grew stronger with each passing day? The sound of a horse approaching brought her to her feet, her heart racing again, but this time with anticipation rather than fear. Sam appeared from the twilight shadows, dismounting and securing Thunder to the hitching post before climbing the porch steps. "I wanted to make sure you were all right," he explained, hat in hand. "After today, I'm fine," Rose assured him, gesturing to the porch swing. "Join me." They sat side by side, the gentle creaking of the swing the only sound for several minutes as darkness settled around them, stars appearing one by one in the vast Wyoming sky. "Sam," Rose finally said, gathering her courage. "What were you going to say earlier?" Before Hank arrived, Sam was silent for so long that Rose began to fear she had misinterpreted the moment entirely. Then he turned to face her, his expression visible in the soft light spilling from the house windows. "I was going to say that I love you, Rose McAllister," he said simply, directly, in the straightforward manner that was so essentially him. "I think I started falling for you the moment I found you in that field, though I was too stubborn to admit it to myself." Joy bloomed in Rose's chest, warm and radiant. "Oh, Sam," she whispered, reaching for his hand. "I love you too. I've been afraid to say it, afraid you might not feel the same." His fingers intertwined with hers, strong and calloused, but infinitely gentle. "I wasn't sure if you could be happy here, in this life. It's not what you're used to, not what you were raised for. This is exactly the life I want," Rose said with quiet certainty. "Here on this land. With you." Sam's free hand came up to touch her face, tracing the curve of her cheek with wonder. "Are you sure, Rose? Ranch life is hard, even in the best of times." "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied, leaning into his touch. "These past months have shown me what truly matters. Not society's approval or fancy drawing rooms, but honest work, meaningful connections." She smiled. A good man to share it all with. The tenderness in Sam's eyes nearly undid her. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward until his lips met hers in a kiss that began gently but quickly deepened with the intensity of feelings too long restrained. Rose had been kissed before proper, restrained kisses from proper, restrained Boston suitors. Nothing had prepared her for the warmth that spread through her body at Sam's touch, the rightness she felt in his arms, the certainty that this was where she belonged. When they finally parted, both breathless, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I should have done that weeks ago," he murmured. Rose laughed softly. "We have time to make up for it." He pulled back slightly to look into her eyes, his expression growing serious. "I want a life with you, Rose. A future together. I know it's soon, and I should probably court you properly, but yes," Rose interrupted, her heart too full to wait for formal proposals. "Yes to everything, Sam. A life, a future, all of it." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. He gathered her close again, his kiss a promise of all that was to come. Above them, stars scattered across the Wyoming sky like diamonds on velvet, bearing witness to love found in the most unexpected of circumstances, a love born when a woman collapsed from exhaustion in a field, and a cowboy carried her home to his heart. 5 years later, the spring roundup at Whispering Pines was in full swing, cowboys moving among the cattle with practiced efficiency as they separated calves for branding. The operation had grown significantly since Rose McAllister first arrived in Wyoming, now boasting over 200 head of cattle, a dozen fine horses, and a reputation for quality that extended beyond Willow Creek. Rose stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching the activity with pride. The house itself had been expanded over the years, a new wing added to accommodate their growing family. The exterior freshly painted, flower gardens now blooming where once weeds had taken hold. The sound of childish laughter drew her attention to the side yard, where 4-year-old Henry was attempting to rope a patient old saddle horse under the watchful eye of his father. The boy's dark hair and blue eyes were the image of Sam's, though his determined expression was pure McAllister. "Mama, look," Henry called, spotting her on the porch. "I caught him." Rose smiled as the loop of rope settled around the horse's neck, more by the animal's cooperation than the child's skill. "Well done, sweetheart." Sam grinned up at her, pride evident in his expression. "A natural cowboy, just like his pa? Heaven help us," Rose teased, descending the steps to join them. One stubborn reed is quite enough. Sam caught her around the waist as she reached them, pulling her close for a quick kiss. You love my stubborn ways, Mrs. Reid. I do, indeed, Mr. Reid, she admitted, returning his kiss before turning to praise her son's accomplishment properly. Life had unfolded in ways Rose could never have imagined that day she collapsed in Sam's field. Their wedding had taken place that winter, a small ceremony in the Willow Creek Church followed by a celebration at Whispering Pines that had brought together the entire community. James Barrett had eventually sold his holdings and moved to California, his ambitions for controlling the county's water rights thwarted by a coalition of small ranchers led by Sam. The former bank robbers were serving long sentences in the territorial prison, their threats against Sam having come to nothing. Whispering Pines and Sam's original property had been merged into a single operation, though they maintained both houses, the original cabin serving as a guest house now for when Sam's sister Clara visited with her husband and children from St. Louis. Henry had arrived a year after their marriage, bringing joy beyond measure to both his parents. And now, as Rose rested a hand on her slightly rounded belly, another child was on the way, a daughter, she suspected, though she kept that intuition to herself. Riders coming, Sam observed, shading his eyes to peer down the long drive. Looks like Hank and Mary returning from town. Hank Turner had remained a loyal employee, eventually becoming foreman of the expanded ranch. 2 years ago, he had married Mary Wilson in a ceremony held right on the property, the young couple now expecting their first child as well. I hope Mary got the fabric I ordered, Rose said, anticipating the package. I want to start on the nursery curtains this week. Sam's hand covered hers where it rested on her stomach, his expression tender. No rush. We've got months yet. You know me, Rose replied with a smile. I like to be prepared. Sam chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. That I do, love. That stubborn preparedness of yours saved our cattle during that early blizzard last year. Henry, bored with adult conversation, had moved on to attempting to climb onto the patient horse's back. Sam gently redirected him, showing him how to lead the animal properly back to the corral. As Rose watched them together, her husband's large hand guiding their son's small one, she was struck again by the blessing of this life she had found. The girl who had arrived from Boston, desperate and alone, had found not just survival, but profound happiness in this wild, beautiful land. When Sam returned to her side after settling Henry on a bale of hay to watch the branding from a safe distance, Rose leaned into his embrace, drawing strength and comfort from his solid presence, as she had since that first day. What are you thinking about with that dreamy look? He asked, his arms secure around her waist. How fortunate I am, she answered honestly. How close I came to missing all this. If you hadn't found me that day. Sam's arms tightened around her. But I did find you, and I thank God for it every day. He turned her to face him fully. You know, when I rode out that morning, I was planning to track those Mustangs in the south pasture. Changed my mind at the last minute. Felt drawn to ride north instead. Providence, Rose murmured, reaching up to touch his beloved face. Or fate. Either way, Sam said, his blue eyes holding hers. Best decision I ever made was carrying you back to my cabin that day. And the best thing that ever happened to me, Rose replied, was collapsing in your field. Their laughter mingled as Sam pulled her close again, their kiss a celebration of the unexpected journey that had brought them together and the beautiful life they continued to build day by day in the heart of the Wyoming wilderness.